Hello everyone, welcome to session 11 of IS Baba's Rapid Revision series or RARE series for Prelims Examination 2021. I am Preetham Reddy and in this session I will be dealing with 10 high probable topics from Polity Current Affairs which are important for UPSC Prelims Examination 2021. So in today's session we will be dealing with some important current affairs related articles, especially from the topics of day 15 and 16 schedule. Okay, so first topic is new rules for administration notified in the Union Territory of Jammu Kashmir. Second is difference between 5th and 6th schedule, very important, and we will try to know about autonomous district councils and Ringma tribe which was in news. So constitutional provisions dealing with languages and Munshi Iyengar formula, and we'll try to know some important draconian acts such as Unlawful Activities Prevention Act, and then Sedition, and then National Security Act, which are quite often in news. Then we'll try to understand the recent judgment by Supreme Court in the right to protest, and also we'll try to know about International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, and finally Section 16 in the Citizenship Act 1955. So these are today's topic. So let's start with the first one, new rules which are notified in the Union Territory of Jammu Kashmir. So you have to remember, recently the centre, it has issued some rules for smooth functioning of Jammu Kashmir administration. So the rules were notified under the Jammu and Kashmir Reorganization Act 2019. So first you have to know it is under Jammu and Kashmir Reorganization Act 2019. So these rules, they specify the functions to be performed by the Lieutenant Governor and the Council of Ministers. So majorly whatever the new rules which are notified, so they are for smooth administration or smooth functioning of the Jammu and Kashmir administration, and it majorly specifies the functions to be performed by the Lieutenant Governor and the Council of Ministers. So let us see what are the major rules which were notified recently. So according to the Ministry of Home Affairs notification, so the first one is the function of police, public order, all India services and anti-corruption. So it will fall under the Lieutenant Governor. So first one, it is talking about the executive function of the Lieutenant Governor. So the functions of public, police order, all India service and anti-corruption, so they fall under the purview of the Lieutenant Governor. This means that the Chief Minister or his Council of Ministers will have no say in the functioning of the services. So this is what first you have to remember. Second is talking about the minority community interests. Any matter which may affect the peace and tranquility of the Union Territory or interest of any minority communities, scheduled castes, scheduled tribes and backward classes, so they will be submitted to the Lieutenant Governor. So they will be submitted to the Lieutenant Governor, especially through the Chief Secretary and under intimation to the Chief Minister before issuing any order. So again we can see the rules has empowered Lieutenant Governor. So next important rules which was notified was service matter and role of Council of Ministers. So Council of Ministers headed by the Chief Minister will decide upon service matters of non-All India services officers. So Council of Ministers, they will decide upon service matters of non-All India service officers, and also Council of Ministers headed by the COM, they will decide on the proposals to impose new taxes or land revenues, sale, grant or lease of government properties, or reconstituting any department or offices or draft laws. And next, the new rules talks about difference of opinion. So if in case of a difference of opinion between the Council of Ministers and Lieutenant Governor, so here one more clause is added that where no resolution is found for a month, then the Lieutenant Governor's decision that will be deemed to be final. Okay, so again it is empowering Lieutenant Governor more. And then next, new departments. So the new rules has provided that there will be 39 new departments in the government of Union Territory of Jammu Kashmir. And finally the new rules talks about the relationship with the centre. So the new rules which was notified by the Ministry of Home Affairs, it states that all communications received from the centre, so all communications received from the centre, may it be from Prime Minister or other ministers, so it shall be submitted to the Chief Secretary or the Minister in charge of that particular matter under consideration, the CM and the Lieutenant Governor or Lieutenant Governor, unless such communication is of a routine or unimportant nature. And any matter which is likely to bring the government of union territory into controversy with the center or a state government, so be brought to the notice of the lieutenant governor and the chief minister. So it should be chief minister. So you have to remember this. If in case any matter which is likely to bring the government of UT of Jammu Kashmir in controversy with the center or any state government, then that matter, so as soon as possible, it should be brought to the notice of the lieutenant governor and the chief minister, especially by the secretary concerned through the chief secretary. So these are some of the important facts which you have to remember. So next topic, difference between fifth and sixth schedule. So this particular topic is important because it is quite often in news. So leaders in Leh, so they are demanding the constitutional safeguards under sixth schedule for the union territories of Ladakh and even Arunachal Pradesh Assembly. So even Arunachal Pradesh Assembly, it has passed a resolution to bring the state under the ambit of sixth schedule of the constitution. So why this sixth schedule? So we have to know difference between fifth and sixth schedule and how sixth schedule will benefit certain states. So remember, currently Ladakh, leaders in Ladakh or Leh, they are demanding sixth schedule. Okay, so we know that Ladakh, it has almost 95% tribal population and it has a very distinct ethnicity, culture, custom, etc. So they feel that if in case Ladakh is under sixth schedule, so they can be protected through the constitutional safeguards under the sixth schedule. So we'll try to understand the difference between fifth and sixth schedule. So fifth and sixth schedule, you have to know, they provide for alternative or special governance mechanism. Okay, so they provide for some special or alternative governance mechanism, especially for certain scheduled areas in mainland and certain tribal areas in northeastern India. So first difference what we have to know is, so I have given a table. So here I have provided schedule area under fifth schedule, and when it comes to schedule 6, it is talking about tribal areas. And schedule areas here, it deals with the mainland. Okay, so the special governance mechanism for schedule areas in the mainland, and when I am talking about tribal areas, at current it deals with the northeastern states. So first important fact what you have to remember is the interest of the scheduled tribes outside the northeast states. So they are protected by the fifth schedule, whereas sixth schedule, it has provisions for the constitution of autonomous districts or autonomous district councils. So this is what you have to remember. Next, there is separate regional council for each autonomous district. So we know that the sixth schedule, so it has provisions for the constitution of autonomous districts and councils. So this autonomous districts and councils, they have a varying degree of autonomy to frame laws to protect the interests of the tribals. That's the reason many states like Ladakh and Arunachal Pradesh, they are demanding for this particular sixth schedule status. And next, we have to know that Article 244, so it provides, or this article deals with the administration of both schedule and tribal areas. So first you have to know Article 244 is important because Article 244, it deals with the administration of both schedule and tribal areas, and this Article 244, it defines schedule areas as those areas which are defined by the President, and it is mentioned in the fifth schedule of the Constitution. So under this article, any area of India which can be declared by the President as scheduled areas, so it comes under fifth schedule, and it deals with the provisions for the constitution of a tribal advisory council. So fifth schedule deals with the provision of constitution of tribal advisory council, and we have Article 244A. So this one deals with the formation of an autonomous state comprising certain tribal areas in Assam and creation of local legislature or council of ministers or both therefore. And next you have to know Article 244A, it deals with provisions for the constitution of autonomous districts under the executive authority of the state concerned. So finally, just know that under fifth schedule, it deals with constitution of tribal advisory council, whereas under sixth schedule, it deals with autonomous district council. And you have to know the difference between functions of president and governor. So under fifth schedule, the governor has the power to adopt laws passed by parliament and state legislature in such a way that it suits these areas. So in other words, I can say that the power to decide whether any central or state legislation implies over the state having schedule areas, it lies in the hands of governor. So it provides governor with the power to make regulation for good governance and peace for the area. So governor can also repeal or amend any regulations with respect to the states having scheduled areas, but only with the assent of the President of India. And with the consultation of the governor of state, the president can alter, add, diminish the boundary of a scheduled area. So these are some of the important points what you have to remember. And under Schedule 6, so the power to organize and reorganize the tribal areas as autonomous district, they lie with the governor of the states, and he can also alter the name boundary of such tribal areas. And since one autonomous district can have different types, for better administration it is divided into autonomous regions by the governor. And finally, you have to remember, this is very important, the center and the state acts, they do not apply to these autonomous and regional councils unless modified and accepted. That's the reasons Union Territory Ladakh, so leaders of the Union Territory of Ladakh and also Arunachal Pradesh Assembly, they are demanding for the constitutional status, that is 6th schedule. So you have to remember these differences while you are revising. So next important topic is Autonomous District Council. So why Autonomous District Council is in news? Because these Rengma Nagas, so Rengma Nagas in Assam, they are demanding an Autonomous District Council. And then you have to know these Rengmas are Naga tribes who are found in Nagaland and Assam. And we know that 6th schedule just now we saw. So 6th schedule of the constitution, it protects the tribal population and it provides autonomy to the communities through creation of ADCs, that is Autonomous District Councils, so that can frame laws on land, public health, agriculture and others. And it also provides the freedom for the tribals to protect their language and culture. It also provides them the freedom to exercise legislative and executive power to govern themselves differently than the rest of India. So that's the reason advisory district council and 6th schedule is important. And as of now, there are 10 autonomous councils which exist in Assam, Meghalaya, Tripura and Mizoram. So as you can see here, under Assam, North Kachar Hills, Karbi Anglong, Bodoland Territorial Area, Kasi Hills, Jaintia Hills, Garo Hills, Chakma Mara and Lai districts, and then tribal areas in Tripura. Okay, so currently there are around 10 autonomous councils which exist in Assam, Meghalaya, Tripura and Mizoram. And these ADCs, so Autonomous District Council, they act as a corporate body for which the constitution has given varying degree of autonomy within the state legislature. So this is very important. So they have greater autonomy, and these ADCs, they are empowered with civil and judicial powers, so they can make laws on matters like land, forest, fisheries, social security, appointment of chief headmen, social customs, etc. That's the reason leaders of Leh and Arunachal Pradesh, they are demanding for this particular constitutional status. And councils are given more power than the local governments under 73rd and 74th amendment. So these are some of the important points which you have to remember regarding 5th and 6th schedule as well as Autonomous District Council. So next important topic is languages and Munshi Iyengar formula. So we know that the current government, it brought in national education policy. There were a lot of debate with respect to the languages, and also the current government intends to bring one nation, one language. Okay, so let's try to understand the constitutional provisions dealing with the languages. So first what you have to remember is 8th schedule. So 8th schedule to the constitution, it lists the official languages of the Republic of India. So you have to remember, and the constitutional provisions relating to the 8th schedule, they occur in articles 344 and 351 of the constitution. So at present there are around 22 languages which are listed under 8th schedule. So these are the facts which you have to remember. Next important article is article 343. So article 343 provides that at present official language of the union is both English and Hindi with Devanagari script. And next article 344, it is very important because constitution provides for the monitoring of the progressive use of the Hindu language. So you have to remember this article 344 provides for the constitution of a commission by the president on expiration of 5 years from the commencement of constitution and thereafter 10 years. So right now every 10 years, so article 344 provides that there should be constitution of a commission by the president for the monitoring and progressive use of the Hindi language. And next article 351 of the constitution, it provides that it shall be the duty of the union to promote the spread of Hindi language, to develop it so that it may serve as a medium of expression. So this is very important. So Article 351, it provides that it is the duty of union to promote the spread of Hindi language. And next you have to remember Munshi Iyengar formula. So according to this formula, English was to continue as the official language of India along with Hindi for a period of 15 years, but the limit was elastic and the power of extension was given to the parliament. So you have to know, according to this Munshi Iyengar formula, so this particular formula gave that English should continue as the official language of India along with Hindi. And you have to remember, with the passage of Official Languages Act during 1960s or 63, so it provided for the continuation, or it provided for the continuous use of English for all official purposes along with the Hindi language. So these are some of the constitutional provisions dealing with languages, and you should know about Munshi Iyengar formula, which was recently in news. So next important topic is Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. So this UAPA Act is important as there were some articles which provided the data by the Ministry of Home Affairs on this UAPA. So there has been 72% increase in the number of arrests made under this particular draconian UAPA, that is Unlawful Activities Prevention Act, in 2019. So there is around 72% increase in the arrests just in 2019 compared to 2015. And according to the data which was provided by the Ministry of Home Affairs in the Lok Sabha, so in 2019 the highest number of cases was registered in Manipur with 306 cases, second Tamil Nadu, third Jammu Kashmir, fourth Jharkhand, and fifth Assam. And highest number of arrests were made under this UAPA, that is Unlawful Activities Prevention Act, was in Uttar Pradesh with 498 arrests, then Manipur with 386 arrests, Tamil Nadu with 308, Jammu Kashmir and Jharkhand. So these are the top 5 states when it comes to number of cases and number of arrests under this Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. So students should know what is this Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. It was passed in 1967 and it aims at effective prevention of unlawful activities association in India. So you have to know it aims at effective prevention of unlawful activities. So the act assigns absolute power to the central government. So if the center deems an activity as unlawful, then it may declare it so. Okay, so you have to remember. And it has death penalty and life imprisonment. And it has death penalty and life imprisonment as highest punishment. And under UAPA, that is Unlawful Activities Prevention Act, both Indian and foreign nationals can be charged under it, and it will be applicable to the offenders in the same manner even if crime is committed on a foreign land, that is outside India. And 2004 amendment added Terrorist Act to the list of offences to ban organization for terrorist activities. Okay, so now, so these are some of the basics which you have to remember. But next important topic, that is there was recent amendment to this UAPA Act in 2019. So this amendment bill was passed. So in August 2019, Parliament passed the Unlawful Activities Prevention Amendment Bill 2019. So under this new Amendment Act, so you have to know the primary change was the addition of 4th schedule under the UAPA Act. So the primary change was the addition of 4th schedule and the expansion of the definition of the terrorist to include individuals. So this is important. So students should know before the amendment, so this provision only allowed organizations to be categorized as terrorists but not the individuals. So initially it was organizations, now even individuals, they can be declared or categorized as terrorists. So with this amendment to section 35 of UAPA, so the government can now categorize individuals as a terrorist. So once such person is categorized as terrorist, then their name will be added to the 4th schedule of the UAPA Act. So this is what you have to remember. So this particular Amendment Act, it was in news because of criticism. Okay, so an individual, they might be identified as a terrorist without any judicial scrutiny. or even before the commencement of the trial. So, which is violation to his or her fundamental rights. So, many petitions challenge the Amendment Act as being violative of the fundamental right, especially Article 14, that is right to equality, Article 19, that is freedom of speech and expression, and also Article 21. So why Article 14 is violated, that is right to equality? So right to equality is violated since the provision, it does not provide any detailed grounds based on which one may be categorized as terrorist. Okay. And second, so whenever people are dissenting, so we know that in democratic countries we have right to dissent. So whenever people are dissenting, even they are charged under this UAPA. So Article 19, so freedom of speech and expression can be also violated. And finally Article 21, life and liberty or right to reputation is an integral aspect of right to life, and this right will be taken away by the arbitrary exercise of powers under the section 35 as well as 4th schedule of UAPA. And also you should know right to bail, which is also fundamental right, even that one will be violated because under the UAPA getting bail is rare, and the investigating agency, it has up to 180 days to file a charge sheet. So Article 21 of the Constitution, which provides us the right to life and liberty, so refusal of right to bail or demanding the amount that a person is unable to pay is also said to be an infringement of Article 21 of the Constitution. So these are some of the articles which are violated. And this Unlawful Activities Prevention Amendment Act 2019, it also empowered the Director General of NIA, that is National Investigation Agency, which is India's counter-terrorist task force, to grant approval of seizure or attachment of property. At the same time, it empowered the officers of the National Investigation Agency of the rank of inspector or above to investigate cases of terrorism in addition to those conducted by DSP or ACP or above rank officer in the state. Okay, so these are some of the amendments which were recently added. So do revise those things and do know what are the fundamental rights associated with this. Next important topic is right to protest and International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. So as I discussed earlier, right to protest, it is a fundamental right. So Supreme Court has held that right to protest is a fundamental right. So demonstrations over issues like political rights and racial justice or protesting peacefully online or in person, so they are fundamental human right. Okay. However, Supreme Court has recently highlighted that occupying public places for protests, they are not acceptable and such a space cannot be occupied indefinitely. So as you can see in the figure, democracy and dissent go hand in hand, but then the demonstrations expressing dissent, they have to be in designated places alone. So the Supreme Court also observed that the right of the protester has to be balanced with the right of the commuter, so they have to be coexist in mutual respect. So the right of the protester has to be balanced, so it is the responsibility of the administration to prevent encroachments in public spaces. So this is what the Supreme Court has observed, and you have to know Article 21 of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, they guarantee the right to peaceful assembly. So we'll try to understand about this International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, and also we'll try to see what are the constitutional provisions available to right to protest. So Article 19 subclause, so Article 19 subclause 1A, it provides right to free speech and expression. 1B provides right to assemble peacefully and without arms. And 19 subclause 2, it places certain restrictions on the right to assemble and freedom of speech and expression. So what are those reasonable restrictions? So what are those reasonable restrictions? It is provided here. So it should not affect sovereignty and integrity of India. It should take care of the security of the state, friendly relation with foreign states, public order, decency or morality, or in relation to contempt of court, defamation or incitement to an offence. And finally, Article 51A, it safeguards public property and to avoid violence during the protests. And there is this particular case where Supreme Court on Ram Leela Maidan incident, so it also talked about the right to peaceful protests. So these are some of the fundamental rights dealing with right to protest, so you have to remember. So next, International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. So it is a multilateral treaty which is adopted by United Nations General Assembly. So this ICCPR, that is International Covenant on civil and political rights, it is monitored by the United Nations Human Rights Committee, and the covenant commits its parties to respect the civil and political rights of individuals, including the right to life, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, electoral rights, and rights to due process and a fair trial. So this ICCPR, it doesn't only involve with guaranteeing the right to peaceful assembly, but also other civil and political rights of individual, like right to life, or freedom of speech and expression, or freedom of religion, freedom of assembly, electoral rights, etc. So this ICCPR, it is an important multilateral treaty, and it is monitored by the United Nations Human Rights Committee, and also it respects the civil and political rights of individuals. And this ICCPR, it is part of International Bill of Human Rights along with the International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights and Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And this ICCPR, it became effective in 1976. So these are some of the important facts which you have to remember. So next important topic, that is sedition and section 124A. So sedition, most of you people know, it is defined as the illegal acts done of inciting people against the government in power. So sedition is any such act or speech which incites anybody to form an anti-national views against a government, or is probable to disrupt the public peace or harmony of the state. So section 124A under IPC, so it defines sedition. So what does section 124A IPC say? So sedition is an offence committed when any person, so by words or by writing or any spoken or by sign or by visual representation or otherwise, they bring to attempt, or they bring to, or try to attempt to bring in hatred or contempt, or they attempt to excite disaffection towards the government established by law in India. So then this section 124A IPC, it can book a person on sedition charges. So you have to know, sedition is a non-bailable offence, and the punishment ranges from imprisonment up to 3 years and also to a lifetime, and to which fine may be also added. And you should know, a person charged under this particular law, that is sedition, they are barred from government job as well. So they have to leave without their passport, and they must produce themselves in the court at all the times as and when required. So this sedition law is also criticized a lot. And you have to remember, in 1962, Kedarnath Singh versus State of Bihar, the Supreme Court upheld the constitution of section 124A. So the Supreme Court upheld the constitutionality of sedition, but it limited its application to acts involving intention. But the Supreme Court limited its application to the acts involving intention or tendency to create disorder, disturbance of law and order, and incitement to violence. So Supreme Court said there are some reasonable restrictions on the free speech as provided in Article 19 subclause 2 of the Constitution. So Supreme Court decided on the constitutionality of section 124A in this Kedarnath Singh versus State of Bihar 1962, and it also observed that there are some reasonable restriction on free speech as provided in Article 19 subclause 2, and this particular definition with this particular limits, so they are being taken as precedent for all the matters pertaining to section 124A since. That's why this particular case is important. And you have to know, this sedition law, it was originally drafted by Thomas Macaulay. So it was done during British India times. So it was Thomas Macaulay, so who introduced this particular law in 1870s British India time. So next important article, that is National Security Act. So first important point what one should know is, under this particular National Security Act, so a person is taken into custody to prevent him or her from acting in any manner which is prejudicial to the security of the state or for maintenance of public order. So two conditions are there, one is security of the state and public order. So I can say this NSA, it is a preventive detention law, and it was introduced by the Indira Gandhi government in 1980, and it is a stringent law that allows preventive detention for months. If authorities are satisfied that a person is threat to the national security or for the maintenance of public order or law and order. So similar to UAPA, this act also empowers the center, but this act also empowers the state government also to detain a person to prevent him from disrupting some public order or maintenance of supplies and services which are essential to the community. So while revising, you have to know on what grounds NSA empowers the center and the state government to detain a person. So it is when a person is threat to national security or law and order, and also it can detain a person to prevent a person for maintenance of supplies and services essential to the community. And the act also empowers the government to detain foreigners and regulate his or her presence or expel them from India. And next you have to know the maximum period of detention is 12 months, and an order can also be made by the DM or a CP, that is Commissioner of Police or District Magistrate, under their respective jurisdiction, but the detention should be reported to the state government along with the grounds on which the order has been made. And next you have to remember, under this NSA, a person can be detained and they can be held for 10 days without being told the charges against him or her. So this particular law, it also takes away the individual constitutional right or fundamental right, especially Article 21. And also try to revise Article 22, which deals with preventive detention. So try to revise Article 22 as well as 21 in relationship with this particular NSA. So with regard to NSA, you have to note fundamental rights like Article 21 and 22, they are not available to the persons who are detained under NSA, and at the same time the detained person he or she is not entitled to any legal aid. And moreover, even the National Crime Records Bureau, which collects crime data in India, they does not include cases under the NSA, as no FIRs are registered, and the governments use this particular NSA as an extrajudicial power. That's why you have to know about this particular topic. And also I had covered Article 22 prevention detention under topic 450 session 27. So you can refer session 27 of previous year's rapid revision series. So topic number 450, which talks about, so 449 and 450 talks about National Security Act and also prevention detention. So go through that particular video and do revise those things. It is important for exam. So today's last topic, that is section 16 in the Citizenship Act 1955. So recently center has granted powers under the existing rules under the Citizenship Act 1955. So center has granted powers to district collectors in 13 districts of Gujarat, Chhattisgarh, Rajasthan, Haryana and Punjab to accept, verify and approve citizenship applications from the members of minority community who are hailing from Pakistan, Afghanistan and Bangladesh. So you have to remember these three states, that is Pakistan, Afghanistan and Bangladesh. So center has granted powers to the district collectors. So we know that Citizenship Amendment Act, which was passed in 2019, it sought to grant Indian citizenship to 6 undocumented communities that came to India till December 31, 2014, right? So this particular article deals with those amendment or the provisions under Citizenship Amendment Act 2019. So what are the key points which you have to remember for exam? You have to know citizenship is a central subject. So first fact what you have to know is it is a central subject, and the Home Ministry, it periodically delegates powers to the states through some notification under this particular section 16 in the Citizenship Act 1955. And you have to revise citizenship chapter in the Lakshmikant book. So you have to know what are the 8 different grounds on which citizenship can be acquired. So based on registration made by a person of Indian origin, by a person married to an Indian whose parents are registered as citizens of India, by a person who either parent was a citizen of independent India, overseas citizens of India, or acquired through naturalization or registration of a child at an Indian consulate, right? So go through those things in Indian polity book, do revise, and also try to revise Foreigners Act 1940 and 1946, Foreigners Tribunal Order, recent amendments done to this Foreigner Tribunal Order, as well as Article 5 to 11, that is Part 2 Citizenship Chapter. and also regarding Citizenship Act 1955, which provides for different modes of acquisition and termination of citizenship. So as I told, there are 8 different grounds on which citizenship can be acquired. So try to know those and revise. And most of these particular topics, they were covered in previous year's rapid revision series. So do go through those videos for more understanding and revision. So these are the topics for today's session. So let's meet in next session.